Well, here we are, folks, once again. This is the Andy Alberti Show, coming to you on 98.1 FM here in beautiful, hot, sunny, clean Pahrump, Nevada. It might get better than this, but you'll have to tell me where. And just because of that lady we met this morning at the museum, there's no way that Texas has better weather than this. So, we're glad that they're in Texas and that we're here. I wanted to give a little shout out this morning, or today, to a company that came to my home because for, I would say, the last 5 or 6 years, I neglected to repair the valve for my water to my ice maker and water out of the refrigerator door. Now, this is a long time that this has been like this, and now my son has kind of moved in to help us out a bit, or a lot, I should say, and we actually spent, I listen to this, tightwad as I am, we actually spent some money to get that fixed. I got to tell you, that refrigerator is a 24 cubic footer side by side. That's heavy, especially when it's got a lot of food and liquids in it. But I want to give a shout out to the company that came to do that work. Now, they didn't know I'm going to do this, but I have to tell you, they were right on top of what had to be done. They knew their stuff. They got it fixed the way it should be. And I am just one big, fat, happy camper. And this company is located at the corner of Game Bird and Vicky Ann here in Pahrump, Nevada. Now, I could give you the address, but I don't think that's going to do a damn bit of good. But it is at that corner, Vicky Ann and Game Bird. And they have all sorts of refrigerators in there, really good pricing, and a nice large selection. Granted, they're used, but they've been refitted, refurbished, and we bought one. So now we have 3 refrigerators in the house. We have the one in the kitchen, we have the smaller one in the garage, and we have the smaller one yet, which used to be a wine refrigerator as well. So I just want to give them a shout out to say thank you so much for bringing water back into our house. Oh, okay, so I also want to mention before I get into today's topic, by the way, is going to be water. Everything I know about water you could put in the thimble. But that thimble could last an hour, and that's kind of the way it's going to be today. But I wanted to talk about our weekly breakfast at the museum. You know, museums are the history of an area. And when you have a local museum, you get local history. Right now, there's a lot of people moving into the Pahrump area. They're escaping the evils of California, which used to be good things, but today, I can't say that. And they're coming here from Chicago. Wow, I can't blame them for leaving either one of those 2 places. But quite frankly, we don't want them bringing their Chicago and California lifestyle here. Don't come here and say, how come we don't have this? We don't have it. We don't care that we don't have it, and don't come here and tell us you want it. You're one individual or 2 or 3. I'm getting off on my high horse. I don't know how many hands high that was, but those of you who know horses, they're measured by the hand. So if you want to know, if you want a really tall, short horse that's got a lot of hands, you get a person with small hands, which I did happen to see the other day. Okay, so the reason I want to mention this breakfast is every week we get together and we discuss what happens in Nye County especially in Pahrump, but Nye County's the third largest county in the country. So we have to talk about the whole county as well. And last week, we had the Brad Richardson from the district attorney's office come and talk to us about trust and guardians. And it was a very interesting topic because here in Pahrump, a lot of us are old and we're not getting any younger, and the younger people are getting older just like we are. And it's very important to understand what to do to protect your family, your loved ones, if you want to leave them some of the assets that you've accumulated over your life.
Spend it all.
Mr. Producer says, spend it all. And quite frankly, I have to agree with him. Leave nothing, because they'll just squander it anyway. So, and listen, if you don't think that's the case, look at people who win the lottery. Some have gone bankrupt. So anyway, the discussion was about those issues about on your demise when you go to room temperature, what happens to your assets, the things that you had. And, you know, in Jay Schwab, a lawyer who taught a class that I attended years ago, said that you don't own anything. You may think you own it, but you don't. If you owned it, you could take it with you when you go. And you can travel with it, but you can't take it to the next life. You have to leave it behind. So Jay Schwab thought, well, you ought to leave it to somebody. Well, some people in Pahrump have left it to charities, their home. They would sell their home, and the monies that were acquired were left to charity. Others have told their relatives that they're not getting anything. So I always thought, when I go, I want to see real grief. And the only way to see real grief is to not leave anything behind. Spend it all. I told my dad when he was alive, I said, Dad, I want you to spend it all so I don't have to have any discussion with my sister or anyone else about what you left behind. But you know, when they lived through the Depression times, and he did, when you lived through that, and he was a man in his 20s from 1930 to 1940, you develop certain habits because you're afraid of, you want to be prepared in case it happens again. So anyway, at the breakfast, we skipped a week of having a guest. And next week, we have invited Ginger Stumney, who is the county administrator, the public administrator, whose job it is, and if somebody's got to do it, it may as well be her as well as anybody else. And, well, we've had some people who shouldn't have done it, so it's kind of good that she's there. And she's going to come to us at breakfast, and we're going to have a discussion about how her department works, how she approaches the business, what we need to know, what can she tell us that we should do. Because let me tell you what, if you want to know about buying a house or selling a house, if you do it yourself, and you've only done it once in your life, there's a lot to learn. So you go to a real estate agent. Well, if you want to know what to do with your assets, if you have any, when you're deceased, then you want to hear from Ginger. So this is an open invitation to anyone who listens to this show who would like to come and hear what Ginger has to say and what we have questions about. You're welcome to come. Now, this meeting is a $5 entry, and then we provide a continental breakfast so that you won't pass out from lack of nourishment during the meeting. But I promise you it'll be interesting. And you'll hear things, I already know some stuff. You'll hear some things that you never thought about or that could happen. And we're going to discuss all those things next week at breakfast. Now, when does this breakfast take place? It's every Thursday morning, and we meet at 7:30 a.m. We leave promptly at 9. So in an hour and a half, it's pretty lively time. And I want you to know that everyone gets a chance to participate that shows up. We have a mechanism in the way to do that. So again, it will be next Thursday. Well, I shouldn't say next Thursday. It's actually every Thursday, but this particular Thursday coming up in July, next week, will be the day that we have it. And I'm going to have to look that up if I had a phone. Okay, so you can't have everything every day, you know. Sometimes things just don't go right. Well, anyway, today is July 8th, so next week will be July 15th, and that will be the day. I calculated that in my head because I went to Catholic high school. They made sure I could add. Okay, so there's that. And then I have one other issue I wanted to bring up. When we elect people into government, we expect them to take care of business the way we expected them to take care of business based on their promises. And as most of you know already, those promises are like dust in a sandstorm. Sometimes nothing happens. And sometimes what you expect to happen doesn't. And when it does happen, my God, how did that happen? Well, the reason I'm mentioning that is we are looking for people who would like to serve on committees to help our elected officials and local government decide on what's best for our future here in Pahrump and Nye County. And you'll always be treated with respect at these meetings. There was a time when you wouldn't get a certificate, but sometimes these days you might. And there are places where you can be on committees. As an example, we have a library board, which now has 2 vacancies. If you have some expertise in reading or library science or whatever that happens to be, you might consider dropping me a note, and I'll tell you where to send it in a minute. Or if you wanted to, we own Valley Electric. You and me and everyone else that buys electricity from Valley Electric are member owners. So you have a small piece of it, but you're an owner. That's why they have to conduct business in a certain way. And you know, they need people to give them guidance and help as well. And then, so they have committees. You can actually go look on the website and see what committees they have. So those are 2 places that we're looking at: government, local government, the museum, the library. Library also has the museum also has a board of directors, and it can't hurt to have some good people on that as well, so that we have the best museum in the West we could have. And right now, I've got some interesting stuff there. I see it every Thursday. So we'd love to have you all stop by. The museum is open every week, Tuesday through Sunday. I take that back, Tuesday through Saturday, opening at 9 a.m. Stop by and see Marilyn. She'd be happy to help you get acquainted with what's in the museum. And there is a very interesting display on Yucca Mountain. So I think that's all I'm going to give you today. Oh, if you want to do any of these things, if you want to be on any kind of a committee, and you don't know what committees are available, you can send me an email to andy@andyalberti.com. Really simple. And it's Alberti is Albert with an I at the end. So it's andy@andyalberti.com. And tell me what you'd like to serve on, and I will see about getting your name put into the hat or steering you into the place where you can do it yourself. And we do need to have that because this is a growing community. We're growing to the point where we're looking at some of the assets that we have here in town, and we're questioning how long will they last. So again, the email address is andy@andyalberti.com. Well, by the way, my website, in case you want to go on the website and look for things, is cparumpwithandy.com. It's like I'm going to give you a tour. You want to see Pahrump? Okay, you can see parumpwithandy.com. And if you go there, my website is set up for me to use. So there's all kinds of links on there. If you're looking for something that has to do with Nye County or the school district or Nevada, I got the best links of any website around. I know because I've looked at the others. And also, I'm going to give you my phone number just in case when the show is not airing, you want to contact me. And that's 775-513-6056. And you can either call me or send me a text. Now, I have to tell you, if your phone number is not in my phone, you're going to show up as spam. So you're probably better to send a text first. And that would be to 775-513-6056. Okay, that's all the activities I got going on. I want to mention one other thing. And, you know, we do this breakfast every Thursday, early in the morning. This has been going on since around 2007. I actually started that breakfast in a little donut shop here in town. And it's kind of fun, and it's interesting. That's why people keep coming back. But a lot of people tell me that, oh, I can't get up that early in the morning, you know. I have to get up at 6 o'clock or 6:30. Well, I don't always read the Las Vegas Sun. I actually threatened one time to cancel my Las Vegas Review-Journal subscription because they had the Las Vegas Sun in there. So it kind of mellowed out a bit. And now I do read things in there periodically because sometimes they make a point. Although the point they're making normally isn't something they wrote. Normally it came from somebody else. But they printed it, so I'm okay. And this one came from the New York Times company. What? Well, actually, almost everything in there, other than the editorial, comes from the New York Times. They may as well call it the Las Vegas Sun of the New York Times, but they don't. So the article heading was on research. And just to make a long story short, which everybody's hoping I will, if you're a morning person, you may be at risk for major depression, a new study suggests. I don't know anybody who's a morning person that suffers from depression. But you know what? Morning people are healthier and have a better outlook on life. So if you want to improve your outlook on life, get up early in the morning, face the day, have a plan for the day, get things done, enjoy your life. Tony Grant used to be on the radio in Los Angeles. And she used to say, live your life to the fullest because you only live it once. All this business of reincarnation, Mr. Producer might get reincarnated because he hasn't finished doing all of his good deeds yet. But I doubt that I will. So I am living my life to the fullest. I have a busy day every day. Some people tell me they're busy, and you know what they're doing? They're watching television. The bane of getting anything really accomplished during the day. Although I will say some television has become educational. Okay, so today I really want to talk about water. You know, we have a lot of people moving into Pahrump, and sometimes you'll have an opportunity to meet someone who was here in 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000. I've been here since 2002. Actually started coming here in 2001 for a whole year before I bought my property here. And quite frankly, Even though I came out here every 2 weeks for a weekend, I had no clue about what this place was like. My real estate broker that was working with me, and I am a broker in 2 states, but I've retired now, told me this was the third largest aquifer in the country. I thought, wow, what an opportunity to move here and see a great place to grow. Until I found out it wasn't even the third largest in the state. That was a lie perpetuated by somebody. And you know, if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth in people's eyes. But this is not the third largest aquifer in the country. As a matter of fact, Tom Bucco, who used to be the county hydrologist, paid more than $600,000 for his work, who eventually he passed away, and his wife, Marianne Giampoli, took over his business. And in 2002, he produced a report that said that the big aquifer, this third largest aquifer in the country, which now is not even the third largest in the state, was using water at the rate of 20,000 acre feet a year. There was a lot of farming going on here, and that was understandable. The water levels would drop during the summer and then build up during the winter. But although the usage rate was 22,000 acre feet a year, we were only recharging at 20,000. Well, if you do the math, subtraction, you realize that we're coming up short 2,000 acre feet a year. Now that's an average. But I think if you've moved here, you need to understand water. There are some artesian wells here in town. You wouldn't expect that in the desert, but yeah, there are several artesian wells here in town. I know there's at least one on the Bowman Ranch. There's one up on Peckstein Ranch. There's a couple around. At least I believe that one on Peckstein is artesian. And I actually have a copy of a letter from the state engineer in 1981, where he said if the 1,500 gallon a minute well ran continuously 24 hours a day, it could drain the aquifer here. Now, I don't know where he got that from. I'm only restating what he said in his letter. That's why I saved the document. But water is very precious to us, and sometimes we take things for granted. How much do we take it for granted? When you get up in the morning and you turn on the water, hold on a second, I got to adjust something here. Okay, there we go. And you turn on the water, you take a drink first thing in the morning. You brush your teeth, you wash your face with water. During the day, if it's hot and there's a swimming pool in the backyard that you filled up with that same water, you can go swimming. So water is recreational. You can use it. You can go down to the Hoover Dam and you go out boating and water skiing. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can play in the water. I mean, when we lived in Long Island, we had just a couple of swimming holes. We could go down there and have a good old time, swimming and diving and just doing all kinds of stuff. And water can help you cool off. As water evaporates, it lowers the temperature. And here in the desert, if you want to have a low-cost way of air conditioning your home, an evaporative cooler is the way to go. I won't get into how that works other than to say that it's so dry here that water evaporates very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, on average, a glass of ice water will not leave a ring on the table, a water ring. It evaporates so fast. And some of the water that we have here has different levels of hardness. I used to think the water throughout the valley was all one hardness. And then I saw a series of tests, and there's different amounts of hardness in different parts of the valley. So not all soil is the same. Even from one 10-foot piece to another 10-foot piece, there could be differences in the soil. The same thing is true of water. I'm not the scientist that I'd like to be, but I can tell you that it's interesting that this could happen when all we look at is we see water and it's H2O. But there's other chemicals in that water. Calcium, for one, which is what makes the water hard. So now that you've moved to Pahrump, or you've lived here for a while, maybe you're not really sure about what this water thing is all about. If you came here from California, almost all your water came through a water utility, and you had to pay for the amount of water you use. Well, it's no different here in Pahrump. If you live in an area like Mountain Falls or Artesia or some of the other developed areas, you live in an apartment, you're getting water from Great Basin Water Company. And so you got city water. And every time you turn on the tap, you expect to have good, clean water. And I have to say, they do their best to try and provide that. However, not everybody has city water here. Most of us, or many of us, have a well. And the state provides for us to have a well on an acre of property or more. And there are certain rules in the state law that determine how this well can be established. Now, I come from Long Island originally. And in Long Island, the water level was at 5 feet. We dug a cellar. My dad built his own house. And I remember him digging the cellar, and he got down to 5 feet and there was water. So he had to put dirt back in the hole so we'd be above the water level. Well, here that's not the case. At my home, my water is down 50 feet. I'm sorry, it's at the 70-foot level on my property. Somebody else's property, it might be 100 feet. All of that is depending not on the height of the water, but on the height of the land, because water has a tendency to seek its own level. Science 101, high school. Grammar school? Yes, water seeks its own level. So we know that the water may need to be tested here, especially if you have a well. And one of the reasons for that is that when this was a farming community, I mean, we grew cotton, alfalfa, there's a lot of farming. And they put fertilizers down to help improve the soil and the nutrients for what they were growing, which is all well and good. But those things have a tendency to leach into the soil. So you may not know this when you get water from your well, but you should always have it tested to find out what's in it. Because different areas of town not only have different levels of hardness, they have different chemicals that are in the water. I want to tell you a little story that I got from a fellow named Charlie Nyberg. Charlie Nyberg was a well driller. I think he started in 1960. I think he was the first well driller here. Still alive. He lives on Basin, down near the senior center. And I've had a couple of conversations with Charlie because he's a really interesting guy to talk to when you want to talk about water. And in the conversations with Charlie, he has concerns about the water that we have. How long will it last? We're putting an awful lot of straws in the water here. Every straw is more consumption. Most of that water doesn't go back into the ground. But one of the things Charlie told me about was when they were farming, there was one fella had a pond next to his crop. So when he would water the crop, the runoff from the crop, the water runoff during irrigation, would go down into this pond holding area. And still there was fertilizer materials left over in the water that went down to the pond. And Charlie and this fella, wanting to do the right thing and be economical, would take that water and pump it back up to his crop, getting 2 fertilizing deals out of 1. And I thought that was kind of good. Then there was another fellow named Richard Reason up in Tonopah. I had a conversation with him a few years ago. And he was farming up in the northern part of the county. And he and a bunch of the other farmers, they realized that the water levels were going down because they were having such a good time creating crops. And instead of having to have the government come in and tell them what to do, they got together, as he explained to me, they got together and decided how they would fix it themselves. The solution was smaller crop yields, less water consumption so the aquifer could recharge. Now, how do we know how much water is in that aquifer? I have no clue. All I know is what they tell me. I've seen maps of the geology in Pahrump. I've heard talks on where the water comes from and where it goes, and who shares our aquifer. You know, this aquifer that's under Pahrump, when we have a county line on the south end of Nye County, just because there's a line there doesn't mean that's where the aquifer ends. It doesn't. It extends into Clark County. And because of that, there's always been concern here in Pahrump that Clark County might want to grab some of that water, which would be a disaster for Pahrump. So, how far does it extend? I understand it extends under the Spring Mountain. By the way, Spring Mountain, since we're talking about water, there are times when there's a fair amount of rain in the hills. And when that happens, that water filters down through the rock in the mountains and comes out at the base. And you'll see some actually pretty good-sized streams running across Highway 160. It actually had a mudslide along Highway 160 several years ago from the amount of rains and the soils that got loosened. So it should always be concerned that we should know about water. Now, maybe you have a well and you figure, okay, so I had my water tested. But here's what I found about water that's even without the testing. You are sharing the water with everyone else that has a well, including Great Basin Water Company, who has various wells throughout the town. Now, I was informed by Charlie Nyberg that there's a floor underneath the soil where the water hits an impervious layer, and that's the bottom. And according to him, that was around 300 feet. Now, I don't know what the altitude was or how he came up with that number, but that was, at least there's a number. I'm sorry, Mr. Producer's got 2 fingers up.
Here is 200 feet.
200. All right, so here at the station, it's 200 feet. So the issue is, if that's the bottom layer, there's a theory that there's another layer below the impervious layer.
Which they won't let you drill to.
So, yeah, they may not let you drill to that. And I don't think you'd want to. The best thing to do would be to preserve what we have here. And why do I bring this up? Because you getting city water at your house or your apartment, that's well water. Because Great Basin Water has to get water from a well. There's the only place they can get it. They don't get it from Lake Mead. It's too far away. Besides that, Las Vegas wants that water. So we're stuck. And it used to be that if you had an acre of land, you had an entitlement, a right to use 3 acre-feet. But as towns start to grow, there are more demands on the aquifer. So one of the things that they do is they pass a law let's say you can no longer get 3 acre feet. Now you can use 2 acre feet. That's the maximum. And quite frankly, most people aren't using anywhere near 2 acre. 2 acre feet's a lot of water. It's almost 7 million gallons, if I remember my mathematics. I don't think that's right. So there you go. You look it up. You can look up how many gallons in an acre foot. I think it's 300 some odd thousand. And so double that is about 700,000, roughly. Okay, so we've got to be careful about this. Every time we put another straw in the ground, is somebody else sucking water out. So now we're starting to see the population grow again. And mark my words, you're going to see the issue come up on limiting anyone that has an acre to less than 2 acre feet. Actually, they tried to limit us to half an acre foot. Let me tell you what, if you've got a garden, half an acre foot in a year is not a lot of water. And if they do that, they wanted to put meters on everyone's well. Boy, there was a bit of an uprising here in this town. We're still at the 2 acre feet, if I recall correctly. So if you moved here and you're on an acre, you have a right to use 2 acre feet of water. Most people won't use that much. You really got to work at it to use that much. But you better be concerned about it. Excuse me. I'm going to need to, Mr. Producer, I got to take a break just for a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm good. Okay, so I'm back. Sorry, I really had to take a break there. Now, you can have your water tested. You go down to Home Depot and they'll test your water, but typically they're testing for hardness so you can get a water softener, which is a whole other discussion for another day. So we won't get into that today. However, I said that you have a right to use 2 acre feet. But there's another issue. That 2 acre feet of water is a right that you have as a homeowner with an acre of property. But there's another thing called paper water rights. This is paper that was issued to farmers and those in need in the 1920s, if I recall correctly. And they were given these water rights, these paper rights, so that they would be guaranteed water to water their crops and the other needful things. But you know, that's a problem because they got it for free. Well, this may wind up being the end of my show. So they got that water rights for free, but somebody else might have needed some water rights. So the person who got the original water rights said, okay, I'll sell you some. Then they started trading water rights or buying them between individuals and companies. And towns and counties decided that if you wanted to build a building, you'd have to have water rights and the paper that said you had the right to the water. So you could then build, like if you want to build a Walmart or you want to build a Home Depot, They had to have water rights to build those buildings. You couldn't just put up a building. The rub was this. They over allocated 60,000 acre feet of water over and above the annual recharge rate. Now, I know you are all out there pretty smart. You can do the math. That much of an over allocation, there's only one or two solutions. One is they have to start getting those water rights back from the owners, however they do it. And what the plan is, if somebody wanted to build, maybe they only had to have 1 acre of paper water. Now they had to retire 2 or 3. You're going to build a house, they want 2 acre feet of water rights for you to build your house. So you'd have to buy 2 acre feet of water rights and then turn those into the state just to be able to build. And that was one solution. The other half of that solution is to tell the people who are already here, who came here and were told by their government, by the Chamber of Commerce, by the town of Pahrump, by the realtor organization, that this was the 3rd largest aquifer in the country. You'll still find people in Pahrump who believe that. Say it often enough, and in their head it might be true, but in real life it is not. So how do you fix that? You start telling people they can't have access to as much water. So the next thing you're going to see when we start growing, and they're talking a population of 80,000, right now we're in the 30s, they're going to start limiting water usage again. Yeah, they could do that, but man, there'd be one hell of a fight. They would have to grandfather in the people that are already here. And governments don't like to grandfather things in. They won't even grandmother it in. And grandmothers are so much nicer. Oh, I don't know what happened here, but I'm having a heck of a time with that. Okay, so who owns the water? When you bought your land on that acre, it came with 2 acre feet. At least it did for me. But who actually owns the water? The state claims that it's their water, and they will tell you how much you can use and where you can get it. And believe you me, they've already done it once. They've tried to do it again. If you think you came here for that nice rural lifestyle having to do with water, think again. The worst thing that can happen to you is to run out of water. Speaking of that, I was very fortunate that the water in my house started at the well. The well did not produce a drop of water. And the first time that happened, I called Larry's Well Drilling. I liked Larry. Larry was a nice guy, and I trusted his judgment. So when they came out to fix my well, and I'm thinking, oh, the well pump is gone. Here's another $800 down the drain, maybe 1,000, who knows. Turned out that it was the pressure switch. And there was nothing wrong with the pressure switch. By the way, you have to realize when you turn on the faucet and nothing comes out, thank goodness you're not in the shower, all soaked up. Or you're not washing your car and it's all full of soapy water. So the water, anyway, that wasn't the case, thank goodness. And I started with Larry, and Larry looked at it, and it turned out there was an ant, a tiny ant, got between the contacts of the pressure switch, and it wouldn't allow the pump to come on. They cleaned off the ant, and back in business. Well, now I know what to do. So I've had to do that 4 times this year because we've had such a problem with ants way out by the pump house. We're in the midst of dealing with that. But I can tell you, when that water turns off, then you know what it would be like if the aquifer went dry here. or we didn't have enough water to support all the homes. And don't think it can't happen. It happened in Arizona. Arizona passed laws about maintaining the amount of water. They actually have a law that says if you're going to construct a housing development or some kind of development, you have to show the government where that water is going to come from to support it for the next 100 years. And there are places in Arizona still with a lot of water. I mean, the Chinese bought some land so they could grow hay. I guess everybody in the world's got a bit of a problem here. And by the way, in case you don't think I know what I'm talking about here, and there are some people here who have, in Pahrump, who have a vested interest in the using of the water. We've gone to some water recycling, where you can find turds in the water at the golf course. And somebody was supposed to be processing that water before it went back into the ground. And here it was in a holding facility, like a little pond with turds floating in it. Well, listen, and I'm not going to mention this particular person because I'm not sure. He never said it to me directly, but I had heard that one of the individuals here said that the water coming out of the well was cleaner than the water going down through the seepage at the pond was cleaner than the water coming out of the ground. I have a problem with that. I don't think that's the case. Anyway, Arizona has laws that protect the water because they did have an aquifer that went dry. And let me tell you what, if you think this isn't happening throughout the West, all you need to do is go over to California on the internet and look up the drought and the effect it's having on the farmers. There are farmers in California that are chasing the water as the water level drops. When a farmer is talking about going down 1,500 feet to water, they know there's a problem. And it isn't just the fact that they're using so much water. Water migrates based on fissures in the ground, whether it's tunnels, caves, or whatever it is. You get a good-sized earthquake, and it's possible that water might get cut off just by the movement of the earth sealing the source that allowed the water to come in. Now, there was in Paso Robles, California, there was very big concerns about that. They had allowed a lot of vineyards to come into Paso Robles, and the vineyards were great. Everybody loved it. I mean, let's drink more wine. But you know, the good time wine drinking experience led to oh my God, the water levels are dropping. What are we going to do? And then they had an earthquake. And as I understood it, there were some areas where the water levels were not recharging like they were supposed to. And this could happen. So this could happen anywhere. I mean, where does our water come from? Does it come from the Spring Mountains? Yeah. How about any place else? We really don't know the far-reaching distance that water travels beneath the surface. It's very hard to determine. You have spelunkers who go down in caverns and they trace water, but we really do not know. All we know is what our recharge rate is. Let's hope it stays that way or gets better. Actually, you can go out to Ash Meadows and you'll see there's an underground river that surfaces through the Ash Meadows and then goes back underground again. And then you can go out to China Ranch over in California, and it's an oasis. They're growing all kinds of stuff there. A nice oasis. It's actually a tourist place. So I think they even have a cabin or two you can stay overnight and enjoy the ambiance of old rags hanging on the trees to protect the fruit. I guess that's something for another show. So I mentioned earlier about the museum. I want to tell you about one thing in there that if you go to our museum, you should look at. I've always said that record keeping is the most important invention ever in mankind. And don't give me womankind or the kind or their kind. I don't give a. It's mankind. It's always been mankind. It's still mankind, and that's the way it's going to be. However, if you go to the museum, you want to. There's a large tree that was cut down, and it goes back over 400 years. And in this tree, they have the side of it, the cutaway, is mounted against the wall, and you can see the tree, the rings in the tree. Now, the way these rings grow in the tree, the first ring is on the inside, and that ring doesn't grow to the outside. That ring stays there. So every year, as the tree goes through winter and comes into another spring, another tree ring grows. It grows on the outer edge of the tree. So when you look at a tree, that's record keeping of the climate of the rainfall that occurs every year for over 400 years. And all I can say is I wish I had known about this. And maybe it wasn't at the museum at the time because it's a long story, but there was no museum when I moved there. But if I'd have known this and I had seen this tree, I would know that the amount of water created now for the last easy 200 years is nothing like what it was 400 years ago. And now that there's all kinds of articles in the newspaper these days about the water situation. You look at Las Vegas, went from, in 1950, there were 30,000 people lived in Las Vegas. 1950. The dam, Hoover Dam, was there already. And yet there was this big bathtub ring around Hoover Dam with only 30,000 people living there. Today it's worse. They had to put an extra pipe deep in the lake in order to suck the water out of the ground. And they're now recycling the water and pumping it back into the lake. So you're drinking toilet water. Well, it's been supposedly purified well enough, but there's other issues to do with that. But do you think that in 1950 that the leaders elected to office would have thought, hey, wait a minute, look at the lake has gone down. We've got 30,000 people here. We better be careful about growth. Let's have growth and we'll just limit the amount of water people can use. You want a lawn? No, you can't have a lawn anymore. Go to desert landscaping, which I think they should do anyway. That's a smart move. Palm Springs didn't do that. There was so much water in Palm Springs, it dropped the temperature in the summer by 10 degrees. But it raised the humidity so high that 10-degree drop felt worse than when the air was dry. Well, you can go to Las Vegas and experience that too, for that matter, but not like Palm Springs. So what are we to do with this? Go to the museum and go look at go ask to see that tree. That is the record. And records are not always kept by man. Sometimes nature provides a record when we learn how to read what it means. And that's what that means. When I moved here, the annual rainfall average was 4.5 inches a year. It's nowhere near that today.
Oh, no.
And today, instead of saying we're in a drought, what we're really hearing is the weather pattern has changed. Doesn't mean the planet's any warmer. That's all a lot of BS. The amount of warmer in the weather is minuscule. And how do you think the Ice Age went away? We didn't have industry or anything at that time, and yet the planet got warmer. They still don't fully understand how that works. But the problem is this. If we are not going to have the rainfall we've expected, and we're going to look like the farmers in California and other places, we're disturbing the balance of nature by what we do. And it isn't just because we're manufacturing things and putting stuff in the air. It's the way we utilize the riches that exist in our country. And right here in Pahrump we're a minuscule part of the whole country. But what happens here, I think is happening in a lot of places. And we better figure out what to do. It used to be we could squander it like you inherited $1 million from your great uncle, and a year later it's gone. You squandered it. Well, we inherited this water, and we better not squander it. And if you moved here and you think this is the third largest aquifer in the country, forget it. Get lost. Go live somewhere else.
Go smoke a joint.
As Mr. Producer says, go smoke a joint. I don't recommend that, by the way. That is not a position that this radio station has taken. It's one man's opinion. So whatever is under the land is ours to use if we can access it. But you can't access it when it goes away. Now, I'm giving you the worst part of the scenario. But because this is such a serious issue worldwide, because population is growing by an exponential rate, they have to figure out where they're getting all this water so people can have food and nutrition and water for everything. Did you hear that, Frank?
What?
The ad came on.
Go ahead, I shut it off.
Okay, so as just a little tidbit from the station. Glad you enjoy it. So anyway, wherever the hell I was, we better take care of what we got. And we better be careful that we don't overuse it. But I will say this, science is working on new ways to generate more water. In Israel, where that's the desert, they have been on the forefront of efficient and economical use of water to grow crops and to feed their people. We are now learning that we have to do that in this country as well. You have to remember, like in California, the population in California was under 1 million at best. But over the years, I remember living in California in the 1990s. They came out with a study that said they would go to 40 million people by 2020. They are there. So when you go from 1 million to 40 million people, you put a hell of a lot of stress on the natural resources in your land. And when that happens, and you don't take care of it, already we can see farmers laying fallow their fields because they don't have enough water to grow the crops they should grow. Some farmers are even selling off their water rights for other people who need them. The warnings are there. We need to pay attention. So once again, before I end, it ain't all bad, but we better pay attention. And next week, Thursday, 7:30 in the morning at the museum, we're going to have Ginger, who is the county public administrator, in some cases called the guardian, and she's going to talk about what happens to the deceased assets once they pass away. So it should be a very interesting topic. If you're old or you're young, this could affect you. And with that, my name is Andy Alberti. This has been 98.1 FM broadcasting on local power here in the town of Pahrump, Nevada. And I thank you for listening, and I'm out of here.